Well, in the early chapters of 1 Samuel, we come across a very interesting situation regarding the Ark of the Covenant, which begins in chapter 4. There we read how the Israelites lose a battle against the Philistines, and they wonder, why did the Lord uh, cause them to lose? Why didn't He give them victory? And so someone perhaps suggests that, hey, if we brought the Ark of the Covenant into the camp, then if we had had it there with us, we certainly would have won. So let's go back out. Let's take the Ark with us this time, and then we will certainly have victory. So they do that. The Ark comes into the camp, and all the people get really stirred up and get really loud and excited, and they think, yeah, certainly we're going to win this battle. And the Philistines are pretty certain they're going to lose this battle. And they even say, hey, God is coming to the camp. They think, my goodness. And so they're afraid. But this didn't deter them from facing Israel in battle again anyways. They fought, and to everyone's surprise, the Philistines won. And they took home a really, really pretty important trophy. They took home the Ark of the Covenant. And what they did with it then was they took it back to their land, and they put it in the temple of their god, whose name was Dagon. And that takes us to chapter 5. Now, Dagon was some sort of agricultural deity whom the Philistines depended on for their agriculture, but also for victory in battle. And naturally, they believe that this is evidence that their God is stronger than Israel's God. They see this as evidence that, or as Dagon defeating Yahweh in battle. That's how they see it. But they quickly find out that things are not as they appear. They come into the temple the next morning, and the image of Dagon has fallen over on its face, and fallen over just there below on its face before the Ark of the Covenant, it says. Now, of course, they might think that maybe this is a fluke. They set him back up, and maybe someone knocked it over in the night or something, didn't realize it. So they set him back up. Next morning, same thing, except this time the head and the hands have been broken off, and it seems to indicate, because only the trunk was left, that the head and hands actually shattered into pieces. So they realize that, okay, this is a problem. They realize that this is something that God is doing, the God of Israel is doing, and it gets worse for them actually. They became afflicted with tumors. And there in chapter 5, verse 7, it says, the men saw how things were, and they said, the ark of the God of Israel must not remain with us, for his hand is hard against us and against Dagon our God. So they hold a meeting, try to decide what to do. The first plan is to just move it to a different city. Well, the only problem is people there got tumors as well. So they move it to yet another city, and people there got tumors. And so they realize it doesn't matter where we send this thing, we're always going to get tumors. God's hand is heavy against us and against Dagon, our God. So they realize they need to get rid of it. They need to send it back to Israel. So they create 5 golden rats and 5 golden tumors as some sort of guilt offering to the Lord, and they put it on a cart that's never been used, a brand new cart, and they put the ark on the cart, and they take 2 cows, 2 milking cows, and they send it off, and it does arrive where they hoped it would, and they took that as means that God accepted the offering, and it arrives in the city of Beth Shemesh, which means house of the sun. Now the people there are glad to see it, and they sacrifice the cows as an offering. And yet we read that some of the people there in the town, some of the men, looked upon the ark. So I think that what that means is that they did not show reverence for it, and God struck them down. And the people responded and said, "Who is able to stand before the Lord, this holy God?" Now this offers a clue, I believe, into what the problem was all along, even from the very first battle we read about there in chapter 4. In fact, chapter 7 elaborates even further, that the people don't seem to get it. And it says there in chapter 7, verse 2, that the people lamented after the Lord. And it is then that Samuel comes along to reveal the problem and also the remedy. 1 Samuel 7:3, Samuel says to all the house of Israel, if you are returning to the Lord with all your heart, in other words, okay, you're lamenting after the Lord. If you're serious about this, if this is sincere, not just some fake thing you're doing, then put away the foreign gods and the Ashtaroth from among you and direct your heart to the Lord and serve him only, and he will deliver you out of the hand of the Philistines. Now, there's 2 things we can see here, 2 problems. The people, you see, were not exclusively worshiping the Lord. They had other gods that they served, the Baals, the Ashtaroth, which were always a pair. They always kind of came together. And their defeat back in chapter 4 was really supposed to be a wake-up call to this, that things were not right between them and the Lord. So this was a wake-up call. And in fact, back in Deuteronomy 28, God warned them of this. There, Deuteronomy 28:25 makes it very clear that if they do not faithfully follow the Lord, that they would reap all sorts of punishments, and one of them being defeat in battle before their enemies. And it says there, the Lord will cause you to be defeated before your enemies. You shall go out one way against them and flee 7 ways before them. That's what happened. And yet, they didn't get the message. It didn't click. It never dawned on them that it was because they were not fully devoted to the Lord exclusively. It never occurred to them that their defeat had nothing to do with the location of the ark, but it had everything to do with the location of their hearts. According to what Samuel says, their hearts were far from the Lord. But why did they think to bring the ark of the Lord into the camp? Certainly it does seem or appear on the surface that they had not completely forgotten the Lord, or that they didn't believe in the Lord. That gets really, I think, into another problem they had here. The reason Baal was such a snare to the Israelites was because he was the storm god. He brought the rain, and because they were so dependent on rain for their crops, they saw Baal worship as a potential tool. In other words, they were using Baal for his rain. And the same was happening with Yahweh. They were trying to use him for victory in battle when it was convenient for them. And when we see God as one who can be used to achieve our own personal goals, then it is no longer the Lord that we are worshiping. Our worship is phony and false. They saw the Ark of the Covenant, you see, as sort of like a rabbit's foot, some sort of good luck charm that they could bring to the battlefield and guarantee that their victory. Now, we can fall to this type of thinking today. I get emails all the time from various parachurch organizations and groups making all kinds of promises that if I get their curriculum, if I get their plan, use their tools, then I'll see all kinds of wonderful results. One recently was promising to double our attendance in one day if we follow their method. Or, there's another way that we fall into this. We might think that if we have a certain style of worship, certain type of programs, that we will really see God move. These things might have their place. And ultimately, it is God who grows the church. It is God who wins our battles. One other area, which is very something that we need to be very aware of and very, very cautious about, is the thought that if only we had our own building, then we would really see God move. We would really see things take off. Well, and that might be true. That might happen in relation to having a building. But we should not see the building as the lucky rabbit's foot. We must understand buildings in the proper context. They're nice to have, good to have, important to have, but not essential to us doing what God has called us to do. Ultimately, it is God who grows the church. Ultimately, it is God who wins all of our battles. He has made it very clear what he wants us to be doing. He has made it very clear how he wants us to worship him. And so if we focus on just simply doing what he commands us to do, and not seeing God or any of these other things as tools to get what we want, or as some way, as some way of manipulating God, and that's really a problem, isn't it? Trying to manipulate God to give us blessings, using him as a tool. But we must see him as he is, that he is holy and none can stand before him. He cannot be tamed, he cannot be controlled, he cannot be made to perform for us. He does as he pleases. He's not interested in just appearances. And that's really where the Israelites also went wrong. The Israelites appeared to be very zealous for the Lord, yet it was skin deep. All the shouting in the camp really was meaningless. So for your discussion, the first thing I want to mention was, when we face defeat, either personally in our own Christian lives or even as a church, maybe things don't go as we hope or planned. What should our reaction be when we face defeat? The Israelites certainly got very religious, and that I think is a tendency in our day. Think back to September 11th, 2001. How many people got very religious after that terrible event? And yet, how long did it last? And yet, there was no repentance. Same with Israel. They got really religious. Let's bring the ark in. Let's get religious. Let's kind of throw God a bone. Let's use this to try to get our way. But yet, there was no heart repentance, no dealing with the heart. Now, what's interesting is that the Philistines actually respond more appropriately to all this. And so their response is contrasted with Israel's. They demonstrate more regret and sorrow and even reverence for the Lord and for the ark than the Israelites did in this situation. So that's the first thing. When we face defeat, what should our response be? Number two, what might be the equivalent today of bringing the ark into the camp in our churches today? What sort of things do we look to as the rabbit's foot of success, or the way to force God to kind of do things that we want him to do? These are real problems. We might intentionally or even consciously do these sorts of things, or even subconsciously we can think that if only we had this or did that, then we would have success. Number three, the third part, is something I didn't really discuss previously yet in this on this part of the story. I didn't really elaborate on this part of the story, but the Philistines had clear heart evidence that Yahweh was greater than their god, Dagon, because really Yahweh is real and Dagon is make-believe. Yes, they did seem to be very humbled by it all, and they responded more appropriately to the Lord than Israel, but still, this did not lead them to abandon Dagon, their god, and start worshiping the true God. They didn't switch sides. They just gave him props for the fact that, yeah, you're really powerful, your hand is heavy on our God, but they basically, it was like what they were saying was, sorry we took your ark, you are powerful, but leave us be. We don't want to mess with you anymore, but we don't want to worship you either. Now, perhaps you've had atheists that you've talked to say, or you've heard of atheists saying something like this, that if only God would appear before me, if only he could manifest himself in a way that I could see, that I could touch, and so forth, then I would believe. Well, it's just simply not true. If that were the case, they would have some explanation as to why that really was not God manifesting himself. You see, atheists choose not to see God because God has not hidden himself from anyone. He is not hiding in the corner somewhere. He has not concealed himself or his mighty power, and the scriptures tell us that all creation speaks loudly to the beauty, majesty, and power of God. And so there is none that can say, I didn't know. He's made himself very clear. So no amount of miracles or evidence is going to change the mind of any atheist. So discuss how might this influence or maybe alter, or how might we factor in this fact when it comes to how we interact with those who say that there is no God. So these are just some things to think about. God bless you in your reading and our daily walk.